In this video, I'm seeing how far I can drive in Nissan UK's electric Nissan Bluebird. Oh yes, this is going to be quite the day. So far I've made it 40 miles here to Burford in the Cotswolds. It's absolutely beautiful. We'll soon find out if I can get back, but let's take a nose around this rather intriguing package. So on the face of it, this is a Nissan Bluebird T72 built in the northeast of England with some rather decorative vinyl attached to it. It's absolutely filthy because we've had one heck of an adventure just getting here. The roads are an absolute state. But I don't drive electric cars just to go, oh, this is novel, it's an electric car. I want to actually see what they can do. Are they actually practical in everyday circumstances? It's not every day you get to test a Nissan Bluebird, which is converted. They've taken the running gear out of a first and second generation Leaf and mashed it into a Bluebird. In other words, they're celebrating what Nissan UK has achieved in its 35-year history, because it began with Nissan Bluebirds and currently they build the Nissan Leaf. They have built around 200,000 Nissan Leafs, in fact. So let's take a look around this one. To all intents and purposes, it's absolutely stock, but as soon as we head under the bonnet, you'll see things are rather different. So with the bonnet lifted, we see just how different things are. That is the complete electric motor and gearbox and inverter out of a Nissan Leaf, first generation. So it's got custom drive shafts to take the drive to the wheels, but otherwise it is a complete Leaf motor power pack. The conversion was done by Kinghorn Electric Vehicles. They managed to get 8 cells of the battery pack up here at the front. It just helps with the weight balance, and they've got another 16 cells here in the back. If you want to see more detail on this, I can fully recommend Johnny Smith, the Late Break Show. He did a review on this car. He talked to the team that built this car. Now the reason this is just lobbed in the boot, so to speak, is purely to keep the conversion as simple as possible. They didn't want to cut the body shell to try and fit the cells anywhere. They wanted it to be a bolt in, bolt out job. So if someone wanted to in the future, they could return this to normal functionality and just be a petrol car again. Moving inside, it's all very standard in here, apart from this little box down here. This is what controls both the heater, a simple 3 kilowatt resistance heater. This lights up the grill badge. We might have to turn that on. I'm going to put the ignition on, and there we go, that should light up now. And then obviously you've got reverse and forwards here. You can't select different drive modes, you just get what is set. And if we look over here, the speedometer has gone crazy. Interesting, that's gone very Hubnut. There we go, behave yourself. And we've still got over half a tank of range. The fuel gauge has been repurposed to show the actual range. Ooh, we can just hear everything buzzing away in there. She's primed and ready to go. Sadly, not a spec that gets headlamp washers. The very first Nissan Bluebird off the production line up in Washington had headlamp wipers. Not just washers, full-blown wipers. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's jump back to the start where this journey began. Right, I hope the low sun isn't going to be too much of a problem today, but we'll get started. We turn the ignition on. That fires everything into life. We have to wait a bit for various systems to do their thing. We've got this rotary dial down here. We've got light, which puts the light on the grille, but they reckon that's not legal to have on the public road, so we won't do that. It's not going to be visible today anyway. We've got heat to turn the heater on, but you've got to make sure the fan's running first so you don't burn out the heater, I imagine. So I'm going to put my foot on the brake, which has kicked in the motor that powers up the brake servo, switch it into drive, and ease away. There is no creep function. They've programmed it not to have the creep. Oh, there's a Tesla. There's a fine comparison. So we've got that usual oddity of just coming to a stop and is completely silent bar the ticking of the indicator. And we shall ease away. You can definitely hear the electric motor doing its thing. I will say, if it is set to regen, it's set to regen very, very lightly. I would prefer, when I'm driving electric cars, I tend to knock them straight into maximum regen, so you can one pedal drive. You can't really do that. In fact, it's running away. I'm finding it very hard to do 30 miles an hour. I'm barely touching the throttle. But here we go, up to 50. Should we give it a bootful and see what happens? That's us at 50. Very smooth. It's not ludicrously quick. They've obviously mapped it to be quite gentle. I guess they're trying to replicate the sort of acceleration you would have had with the original petrol engine. I think it was 90 brake horsepower with a 1.8 litre engine in these. So not actually all that powerful. They were a bit off the pace. And it's a sign that Nissan tended to be fairly conservative in these days. But you can tell how well built this car is because, you know, there are barely any trim rattles as we're driving down the road, and it's a rough road because this is Northamptonshire, and Northamptonshire County Council ran out of money some time ago, so the roads are rough. We've just crossed back into Oxfordshire and we're going to head out to the Cotswolds to enjoy their beautiful roads and buildings. But so far, yeah, it's just so ordinary to drive. I don't know if this was an automatic before they converted it, but it's got an automatic brake pedal now, so it has got the wider pedal, so you can drive with both feet. So the ride does feel a little bouncy, but these were never, in terms of dynamics, Nissan Bluebirds were never a superb car. And this is coming from someone who owned Citroen BXs at the same time as having Bluebirds. I might have to turn the heater on though, because my feet are frozen. We'll do that. We'll press the heat button, turn the fan down a bit. It's a great car to do a conversion on because while the mechanicals were very robust in these cars, like I say, they weren't very exciting. And when I had a 1.6 LX, I swiftly tired of it just because it didn't have enough get up and go. And it always felt quite hard work accelerating in it. This is not rapid, but acceleration is not hard in it. Yeah, but it all feels so familiar. Back in the earliest days of my channel, the first vehicle I drove was a Nissan Leaf, and the second vehicle was a Nissan Bluebird, my own T12 that I owned at the time. So let's talk a bit about that Bluebird history. 1981, Nissan signed an agreement to build a factory in the northeast of England, in Washington, near Sunderland. And it sort of started production in 1986. The very first Nissan Bluebirds of that shape sold here, the T12s, were actually built in Japan entirely. And then in late 86, I think they started building the saloons first and then the hatchbacks. Estates were always built in Japan of a slightly different type. All very, very confusing. But as production ramped up, in the northeast of England, so did the amount of local content. So it was well over 80% by the end of Bluebird production, and I think possibly even higher for the subsequent Primera that replaced it. In 5 years they managed to build 181,000 Nissan Bluebirds, which I think is quite impressive. But the reason they built this example is to mark the fact that that factory now builds electric cars. They've built more electric cars up there, more Leafs, than they have Nissan Bluebirds, in fact. I think it was 2019 when that total took over from the Bluebirds. I think at the time it was 190,000 Nissan Leafs they've built. But in total, that factory up in the northeast of England has built over 10 million cars. That's a huge number. So when people say we can't build anything in this country anymore, they are quite wrong. So Nissan built this car to, you know, to acknowledge the 35 years of success they've had up there. There's still 6,000 people employed directly at the factory, which is pretty good, I reckon. I'm completely off everything at the moment. We're just cruising to a slow, with the same sort of bobbly ride at slower speeds. I remember it's 4 McPherson struts effectively, or Chapman struts if you like, at the back. So there's no creep, so I can just leave it in drive with the handbrake on. It's not fighting against it. That's probably why they did that. We've got a lovely period cassette player down here. My dad had a Nissan Bluebird, so Bluebirds figure long in my life. It was the only brand new car he ever had. It was a company car. But yeah, he absolutely loved it. but sadly it got stolen. Although, first of all, they nicked the Blaupunkt cassette player, ejected his Cliff Richard cassette and left it on the passenger seat, and then some other scroats came and actually stole the entire car, and I was gutted. It was great because even though it was only a 1.6 LX, it had all the toys. It had the 4 electric windows, it had the central locking, it had the tilt slide electric sunroof, or it might have been a manual sunroof on the LX. I'm struggling to remember now. I'm pretty sure it was electric. So yeah, Bluebirds are a car that have figured in my life many times. In more recent years, I think it was 4 years ago now, getting on for 5 years ago, I had one with a failed head gasket, and spent quite a lot of money sorting that out. People followed that video series, took it to Festival of the Unexceptional, where it fitted in absolutely brilliantly, and yeah, had a lovely time. But I got rid of that car because it just didn't excite me to drive. And to be honest, this isn't that exciting, bar the fact it's got electric power. Love this roundabout where the lanes are absolutely impossible to see, as I discovered last night. So I think this is a really nice idea to acknowledge that history, not by just going, oh, here's the cars we built first of all, but by saying we're going to convert one to use the technology we are making today. And this is feeling great. I think retro converting classics, it's not cheap. Looking at Kinghorn EV's website, they say conversions start at around £30,000. And that's not an amount of money I have, so I can't be doing a conversion like that. But more and more people, especially living in cities, might be thinking, well, you know, I could sign up for a brand new car, but I like older cars, and in which case this works really, really well, I think. It's just so quiet. It's amazing how quickly you get used to it. I haven't driven an electric car since I took a Jaguar I-Pace all the way up to Stirling in Scotland, which was a fairly stressful journey, as I recall. But yeah, this is just lovely and effortless. And I think it makes what was, you know, a fairly dull car much more interesting. I'm sure if you've got a ZX Turbo with a 1.8 litre engine, they're not so dull. But I think the regular cooking models, they're just a little unexciting. Right, let's turn the heater off for a bit in the hope we might save a bit of range. Now, a lot of people say, oh well, 70 miles of range means it's absolutely useless for me, but I think even the people who claim that no doubt have some journeys where this car makes sense. Just that, oh, I just need to pop to the shops just to grab something. It's those sort of journeys where EVs are absolute king. But as I've discovered living in Wales, EVs actually have a lot of benefits. It's amazing how wasteful normal cars feel every time you slow down after you've driven an electric car. That charging effect of recharging the battery to slow down instead of just generating heat with your braking system. I think that's a lovely thing. This is reminding me slightly of the time I took a Nissan ENV200 from mid Wales to Devon in November. My feet are a little cold, so I may have to sacrifice some miles to the heater. I think it does make you a better, smoother driver. And it's amazing how skills I've learned driving a Citroen 2CV for years, where conservation of momentum is everything, just to keep your speed up. Those skills translate to EVs very nicely. Back when I was testing EVs, so I didn't want to just drive them. I like testing just how far they'll go, so I can confirm that a Nissan ENV200 will just about do 60 miles of range in the winter in hilly terrain. And I know that because by heck was it a struggle to get home. We did actually have to do things like slowing down on hills, because you've got the torque to go racing up a hill, but when you do that, you're absolutely battering your range. I think they've used the pedal out of a Nissan Leaf because it's got that same detent. You have to push through to get it to absolute maximum power. Now, Kinghorn claim they can tune up these Leaf motors to produce around 200 brake horsepower. That is going to be exciting. Oh yeah, here we are, motoring along at 60 miles an hour. There's here a bit of road noise, but it's mostly wind noise, I think. The old Bluebird isn't as aerodynamic as the Leaf, I'm afraid. So that can't help with range. We've covered, how many miles so far? 14 miles covered so far. We've got another 17 to go. We're still above 3/4 of a tank of electricity at the moment. Good wipers, good overlap, no triangle of doom. Nissan usually pretty good on the windscreen wiper front. Incidentally, Nissan, I think, possibly the only manufacturer to have produced a pop-up headlamp on the Nissan Silvia with headlamp wipers in some markets. How exciting is that? Yeah, I think this has been left in eco mode as you get in a Leaf, which has dulled the throttle response and it is restricting power, so I'm not getting the full oomph of that electric motor, and to be honest, that is something I'm not liking. I know it's better for the range to be that much more gentle with it, but yeah, what I love about electric cars is that electric shove, and I'm not getting that. It doesn't mean I want the I-Pace or Tesla, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds or even half that these days. I don't want that ludicrous acceleration, but it is nice just to have that electric shove, and a Leaf has more shove than this has. And I'm not afraid to use EVs. It's interesting, when I first tested a Leaf back in November 2013, I was stuck within the radius of my house. So few were charging points back then. And while the charging infrastructure still has issues, which you can see plenty of in my test of the Jaguar I-Pace, things have improved somewhat. So when I borrowed another Leaf in 2016, I was able to take it comfortably from my house in Wales up to Yorkshire. We drove all around Yorkshire in it. That was a 30 kilowatt hour Leaf. So the latest one's now 40 kilowatt hours. So you're talking a comfortable 100 miles of range, which isn't enough if you're doing hundreds and hundreds of miles, I accept. But not everyone is doing hundreds and hundreds of miles. Bearing in mind this car has 77,000 miles on the clock. I'm willing to bet it hasn't spent that much time racing up and down motorways. You've certainly got enough power to be keeping up with traffic. Oh gosh, this is oh dear God, Nissan are not going to be pleased with me. Look at the mess I'm making of their car. But I'm not just here to enjoy the novelty. I want to actually put this conversion through its paces. It seems those are going to be very muddy paces. You can hear the suspension working hard. That was always the problem with that strut design of suspension. It's not isolated from the cabin at all, so they always were very noisy. And when you haven't got the noise of a conventional petrol engine, all that suspension noise is that much more apparent. This car only weighs 55 kilograms more than a standard 1.8 litre Bluebird, so the myth that these conversions add loads of weight to a car simply isn't true. The energy density of these batteries has improved to such a degree. It's not like the old lead acid ones, which weighed an absolute ton. And to join the A44, you can follow this road all the way to the to mid Wales. Thank you, Mercedes, for letting me out there. Yeah, I want more acceleration. If I'm pulling out onto a major A road, I want it to hitch its skirts and get a shift on. Doesn't mean I want to accelerate like that all the time, but there are times you definitely want a bit more shove than this car can offer. So just to confirm, I am driving this car like I would drive a normal car. I'm not making any exemptions for it or allowances for it being EV. I am driving at 60 miles an hour because that is the speed limit at the moment. So I could knock my speed back a bit to increase the range, but that's not what I'm about. I want to see how far we can go driving it like normal. Oh, there goes an I-Pace. Bright red. I'm not sure about that as a colour on an I-Pace. Ah, I made a schoolboy error at the beginning of this test. You know, I was complaining about the lack of regen. That's because the battery was full. The regen effect is now much stronger, and I can actually one pedal drive this car. I'm not sure I could one pedal it to a complete stop, but I'm controlling my pace down this hill just by modulating the pressure on the throttle pedal. Yeah, that's simple physics. You can't regenerate electricity into a battery that is full, and it's harder to charge a battery when it's almost full as well, so that'll be why. I feel like a bit of an idiot now, but I remember that specifically from the Nissan ENV200. I remember going into a bend after I'd fully charged it and expecting the regen, and you don't get it. So on electric cars you do get a different, well, it's not really a throttle, it's off throttle response depending on how charged the battery is. But so far we've covered 28 miles. We've only got 2.5 miles to go. So when I said I wanted to go 70 miles today, the lady at Nissan freaked out a bit and was like, oh, I'm not sure that's a good idea. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my 70 miles. That's what I came here to do. So I might take a slightly different route back. Might do a bit more sightseeing, because they're based in an area I used to live in, rural Northamptonshire. It's lovely around there. But yeah, very enjoyable. Oh yeah, I'm liking this a lot more now I've got that regen effect. This is so very pretty. Or it would be if the road wasn't quite so filthy. Beautiful old stone buildings. This is what the Cotswolds is famous for. Yes, there are lovely rolling hills, but it's this stone, the quality of light against this stone, that is the beautiful thing. Some beautiful rays of sun bursting through the cloud there. I'm not sure if you're able to see that or not, but it is very lovely. We are at 39 miles now, or 38.9. So we're going well. There we go. 20 mile an hour speed limit, that helps. There's a very steep street in Burford, and we are about to tackle it, I think. Yeah, there we go. This is Burford, a very pretty, Smiley Transit pickup, very pretty little town. And we are now at 40 miles. It's so pretty, I'm coming back for another go, but we're now coming down the hill, and now I can use the regen to good effect to hold my speed. So I'm not having to touch the normal brakes at all, just pure regen. So after 40 miles, we've made it to Burford. The car is absolutely filthy. I'm sorry, Nissan. What a state it's in. But we made it. And we should make it home. We've still got over half a tank, allegedly. So we won't further ado. Let's go back the other way. Oh, look at this beautiful church. Wow. What a beautiful place this is. So 33 miles to go, take us comfortably over 70 miles by the time we get back. They deliberately didn't fit rapid charging to this car, but obviously because it uses Nissan Leaf infrastructure, you could easily do that if you wished. The main reason they didn't do it is because it would be very difficult to fit the necessary adapter without having to cut into the body. So the little type 1 or type 2, whatever it is, I get confused about the electrical connectors, that doesn't require any chopping of the bodywork to fit. They just replace the fuel filler. To be honest, I don't think Nissan really thought that people would be jumping in this car and trying to see exactly how far it'll drive, but hey, this is Hubnut. This is the way Hubnut does things. Oh, it's a big old hill to get up to Stowe. It's an ambitious overtake. I am foot flat to the floor, but nonetheless, the objective was achieved. Still showing just over half a tank, 28 miles to go. It is feeling quite comfortable, actually. But it is terrain like that can throw you out on your calculations. If you have too many hills, suddenly it can all get rather alarming. Well, yeah, this is still in the Wold, which is quite pretty in itself. Very kind of you, thank you. And here we are in Stow on the Wold, which is just achingly pretty. Haven't been here for a very long time. Used to have a friend who lived here. Hello, John, if you're watching. Just below half a tank of electricity now, 56 miles covered. So I reckon I could quite easily get 100 miles out of this car at this time of year. I'm tempted to try that because it's only 22 miles until we're back at base. That doesn't feel enough of a challenge. Let's see if we can hit triple figures. Now the problem is, I'm a sucker for a challenge. So what do you reckon? You think we should do it? Let's see if we can get 100 miles. It's claimed 75 to 90 miles in winter. But yeah, I'm going to keep my hat on to keep myself warm. It's not too bad in it. My feet are a bit cold, but the rest of me is quite comfortable. And yeah, let's see if we can get 100 miles out of her. It's got to be done. It's got to be done. The one thing I would say, I would have loved it if the rev counter had been repurposed to show you power versus regen. I love seeing the regen. It just makes me so happy. And I can certainly feel it, especially if we just came down a really big hill. But I do like that visual affirmation that at the moment you are putting power into your car. You don't do that in a petrol car. A petrol car, if you need to slow it down, just generates waste heat, whereas this will actually charge itself. And sure, you won't necessarily get a huge amount of power from a regen moment, but you know, every little bit helps, especially when, you know, the range isn't the greatest. Oh god, look at the state of this road. You stay there, little car. It's a charade. Yay, hello little charade. I mean, this is kind of ideal driving for your EV. We're keeping a constant speed. The terrain is not too mixed. I'm not having to accelerate. It's acceleration that kills your range. So stop-start traffic, actually not very good for your range. And having to slow down for tight bends and accelerate again is what really hurts you. Well, there we go. She said I'd be lucky to cover 70 miles. It was a bit risky. I've done that, and we've still got just under half a tank of fuel left. We're back in Banbury, not the most exciting place. We are only 8 miles from our destination though, so I think we're going to go through the other side. Oh yes, we're now coming down to the village of Byfield, which I remember very well because I used to live there. There's a church spire you can just see peeking through the trees, and I used to live very near that, so it was always a massive sense of homecoming as I came down this road, saw the spire, mostly hidden by a muddy truck. It was just telling me I was home. But we've come here as we hit 80 miles, mostly because I just want to prove that there's some very pretty villages in Northamptonshire as well, and they've got the same sort of Cotswold stone. Very, very lovely. We're getting a bit fed up following those lorries. Let's go have a nose down Church Street. Just as splendid as I remember. So here we are. This is the church in Byfield. It's just a splendid thing. I will remember listening to the bells, a bit of campanology of an evening as the bell ringers would come, and it's just an absolutely beautiful church. No idea how old it is. This is Holy Cross in Byfield, and yeah, it's just magnificent. What a place, and just surrounded by beautiful cottages and farmsteads. It's just, yeah, beautiful, beautiful spot. Fine place for a quick pause, but we've got 100 miles to cover. Of course, what I don't know is how accurate this gauge is. I don't know if anyone else has ever tried sort of doing range testing in this vehicle. It's going to be interesting. We're just above a quarter at the moment, 84 miles covered. I'm planning to get to 90, and then I'm going to turn around and come back. So we've gone past where this car lives. So we'll get to 90 miles, and then we'll head back. By the time we get back, we should be over 100. But yeah, all these 50 mile an hour speed limits that have crept in everywhere, suddenly quite useful, because they're helping me extend that range somewhat. So I'm sorry this has turned into a rather large video, but I'm not sure this is necessarily how I thought this would pan out. Now, a regular Leaf will go into turtle mode when you really run the batteries down. I've never managed that. I've had several electric Nissans tell me I've got no range left, and I've still managed to do about 20 miles in them without going into turtle mode. Turtle mode is it's like 5 miles an hour. It's basically allows you to creep out of the way because you're going no further. So it's just to get you to safety. Like I say, I've never triggered that. I'm hoping not to trigger that today. But the needle is hovering just above quarter. And yeah, now we're starting to very much hope for the best. Try and give you a view of it if I can. I think we might just get to Daventry and then turn around and come back. Well, we have reached Daventry, and now we're just going to go around this roundabout and go back again. Around 88 miles at the moment. Okay, as we come back to Byfield from the other direction. Oops. Ah, bus. That's why it stopped. Yeah, as we come to Byfield from the other direction, we are approaching 95 miles and the gauge is now just very slightly under the quarter. So yeah, I'm not doing this to say that you can do 100 miles and should do 100 miles every journey. It's more to prove that if the occasion requires it, you can. I'm not saying an electric car is a replacement for your everyday car, because if you need to do long journeys, especially as this hasn't got rapid charging, it's not going to do the job. So I'm not trying to prove that either. I'm just trying to prove what's actually realistic in terms of winter mileage in an EV. And I am sure this is not performing as well as a Nissan Leaf, but a Nissan Leaf was designed from the outset to be an electric car. Whereas this is a conversion. This isn't aerodynamic. It's not as light as it could be. You only have to lift the bonnet to realise how solid the metal is on these cars, which is why they were so popular with banger racers. They're incredibly over-engineered. So I think that's probably why I would expect better range from an actual Nissan Leaf. But still, I think this remains the most practical converted electric car I've driven yet. It makes a lot of sense, bar the battery pack sitting in the boot, I'll grant you that. But I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could hide that away where the fuel tank used to live. I'm sure there are ways to actually achieve some boot space again. But in terms of driving experience, it just reminds me what's so good about the Bluebird. This seat is so comfortable. There's somewhere to rest my clutch foot. There's a little resting place. It's a comfortable and effortless car to drive, and now all the more so because of the electric conversion. This is a fine bit of engineering, and perhaps it adds relevance to a car that would find itself increasingly banned from city centres in places like London, now Birmingham and other cities. Oxford is now going to implement a zero emission zone. You could use this there. Maybe I should have gone to Oxford. But yeah, it's an interesting insight into where we could be going. The price is still a barrier, I don't deny that at the moment, but there's more and more companies springing up all the time. The technology is getting cheaper and better. So I think it's interesting times ahead. I'm not quite ready to give up on petrol entirely, but I certainly wouldn't rule out a bit of electric action in my life. I'm on 99 miles. And cows are crossing, so come on, cows. That one's enjoying playing with a bit of string. Come on you go. Quite amusing, but yeah, keeping me in suspense. The cows have completed their journey, and now we shall complete ours. 99.3 miles, we are closing in on the ton. Yes, it's just pinged over. I don't know if you can see from there. You probably can't. That is 100 miles on a single charge. So there we go. We haven't got a fat lot of range left, But she did it. That's 100 miles covered today. Got the rear wiper test. Oh, look at that, for a marvellous action, even if it isn't pantograph like the early ones. Of course I made it back. She's absolutely rumming filthy. But yeah, now to get another car filthy and drive home in Betty. I got so excited at achieving that mileage milestone that I entirely forgot to record an outro. So huge thanks to Nissan UK for letting me drive the electric Nissan. And yeah, I'm pleased to prove it is more than just a cobbled together thing just for a news story. It's actually a really practical EV, albeit you'd want a better storage solution for those 16 cells that are mounted in the boot currently, but eminently doable. So yeah, well done to Kinghorn EV, because I think it was a really good conversion. It was just a lovely car to drive as well. And it adds relevance to old cars. I don't think all old cars should be replaced by electric cars. I don't think all old car petrol engines should be replaced by electric motors. But there's definitely room for a bit of coexistence, I think. And that was the best example yet that I've driven of a really usable retrofitted electric classic car. There are so many companies out there now specializing in these, and you're hopefully going to see more EV content on this very channel. But don't worry, we're not about to suddenly change. Not everyone has got 20,000-30,000 pounds to afford one of these conversions. So yeah, we will still be focusing on the average as well. But you know, the very first video on this channel was an electric car, and that interest has never gone away. So yeah, huge thanks to Nissan, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell.